I'm John, K2KWR, and I am at the shop at Buytwowayradios, where I'm making some Messi Paoloni Hyperflex 13 with end connectors for a repeater build for a customer. And so today I'm going to show you some of the tricks that I use to do this cable and put the ends on, and then test them to make sure that they work right. So I'm already installing this end, and I've got two 19mm wrenches, and I want to get that wrenched up nice and tight so that the ground actually makes contact in there, and I'll show you what I mean when I open up the next connector. So here's the Hyperflex 13, as you can see, nice big fat copper cable. Here's our end connector, and if I open it up, you'll see that here's the end, and it comes out just kind of like that. So we've got the center pin, kind of show you that, the center pin, and this little assembly here, which is made up of several different parts. So you've got this spacer, the bottom, I guess you call it a washer, but it's a little thicker than a washer, the rubber gasket that fits in there, and this is the piece that actually goes into the cable, and from there it actually makes your ground connection up underneath the lip inside the barrel. So if you can see that, I don't know if you can see in there, but you'll see there's a bunch of ridges, and it's going to go in and actually hit a stop, and that's going to make your ground connection. So because I make so many cables, I actually have two pairs of scissors. These are the scissors that M&P sells, and you can buy them. One I have just for regular, which is my stripping, and you'll notice I labeled one cut, because this only cuts the center connector. So we're going to take our space, and we're going to run this around while squeezing it just with the right amount of pressure. What I'm trying to do is basically clear off the copper braid, and you'll see when I pull here that the braid is actually coming right off the center core, and I'll show you that. We can pull it out of the jacketing. There it is. Okay, so next is we put the end on, we put our washer on, and we put our rubber gasket on. Now, because I generally make so many cables, what I found, and not so much on these little jumpers that I'm making, because again, this is going for a customer's repeater build, but I put a piece of Velcro at the bottom, and that Velcro stops everything from falling, especially when I'm doing single runs 100 feet, and you're trying to chase it as you're going to pick it up, and the end keeps running down the coax there. Okay, so we're going to take our center barrel, we're going to push that on, and with the Hyperflex 13, it goes on fairly good. I usually give it a little bit of push off the edge of my bench because I want to make sure it's making good contact, and I'll show you that. All right. Then what I'll do is basically take my scissors right to the little contact plate there, run it around, and I'm just barely touching the copper center, and I'm gonna pull this off. And what I do, here's my trick, is I take a pair of linemen, grab the center foam, and give it a nice twist. And what I find that does is make sure that that center conductor stays nice and tight in its twists. Now, they have some guidelines for measurement, but I've been doing this for quite a while, and I can pretty much eyeball just about 10mm where I need to cut it. And unfortunately, I don't have a full camera set up, but I'm going to show you. So I take that and put my scissor on it, and in a second you're going to hear me actually chop this center conductor just like that. And what that does is it keeps it nice and tight. Hopefully this camera will. And that allows me to put the spacer on and then put the center pin on and make a good solder connection. I'm going to twist this a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here on the vise. And we're going to put this center thing on. Now, a lot of times as your scissors get dull, that center spacer doesn't fit perfectly. I'll take my scissor and I'll just run it around just a little bit, and it widens the hole, which makes that nice and wide enough to go around, because you want to try and keep all that copper nice and tight. All right, we take our center pin. The center pin has 4 slots in it. So what I generally do is I take my razor blade, and I have a razor knife, just a standard razor knife, and I'll put it in those slots and basically just run the razor down nice and gently to give it a little bit of space. So when I put it on the center conductor, it's got a little bit of room in there. So let me get that here. This one wants to be a hard ass, but we'll get it. And I'll show you that. So that's kind of what I'm doing. You'll see that there's 4 lines in there that intersect. All right. We take a little bit of that flux. We're going to just put it on the center. Maybe I'll get a better camera setup eventually, but you kind of get the idea. So I'll just put a little bit of that flux up here. I'll take my center pin, gently twist it. And usually I can get it on, work it on a little bit, take my thing and give it a tap, make sure it's got a nice tight fit. There's a little hole here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my soldering iron and clean it off, take my solder, and I'm just going to hold the tip to that hole, work a little bit of solder in there and let it work its way in and heat everything up. Get that flux going through the center copper. And you'll know when it's hot enough, when it starts to suck that solder in. And then I just feed a little bit more, let it heat up. A little bit more, let it heat up. And it starts to flow, and you'll see it sucking that solder right in that hole. And you'll know you're getting a nice, good solder connection from the tip to the center core. And we'll just add a dash more. And I can see right in that slit, the copper's now got that nice tin color on it. And give it a second more here. And then I just smooth it out a little bit. Once that's done, give it a little test. I put the center insulator on it, and we're done. We're ready to put the connector together. So we'll push everything up, rubber gasket. We're going to put the center right through the middle here and just work it in. You got to find the center. You'll feel it. Once you do that, push the bottom into the coax of the coax into the connector. And just kind of give it a twist. You'll feel the sweet spot. And I usually twist it till it gets to the point where I can't twist it anymore. Break out one of my wrenches. Take my wrench and twist it till I get a nice tight connection. And that's what it looks like when it's done. And generally, I have 2 methods of testing, but today we're going to use a simple volt-ohm meter that I have here on my bench. So as you can hear, it beeped. Basic continuity test. And we're going to test. So ground to ground, ground to center. And of course, with a VOM, the hardest test to do is center to center, because these things like to move around. But I'll show you that, because I test every cable that I make. Center to center is good. So that's how you make an MMP Hyperflex 13 3-foot jumper cable with end connectors. Thanks for watching.